There is a claim at the root of the Gnostic writings, and it is a strange one to say out loud that something in you is older than your body and that you have forgotten it, not a metaphor for your potential. Not a nice way of talking about self-esteem. A claim, made in deadly earnest by people who stake their lives on it, that the deepest thing about you was never born and cannot die, and that the whole trouble of a human life is that you cannot remember this, and have forgotten even that there is anything to remember. This is the long teaching, the one that walks the whole map slowly. There is a short companion to it, and the short one is complete in itself. You can hear the shape of the whole path in a few minutes. But some things only give themselves up if you are willing to walk them without hurrying, so take your time with this one. We are going to lay out, as plainly and as patiently as we can, 3 things. What this tradition says has gone wrong with us, the shape of the way it offers home, and a practice you could actually begin tomorrow morning. And all the way through, we are going to be honest about which parts are ancient myth to be held lightly, and which parts are small and checkable and real, because that honesty is not a disclaimer bolted onto the teaching. It is part of the teaching. Let us begin where the texts begin, not with you and not with the world, but with the light. In a Sethian text called the Apocryphon of John, the secret book of John, one of the great surviving Gnostic scriptures, the writer tries to speak about the ultimate source and immediately runs into the problem that has faced every mystic in every tradition. The source has no name you can fix to it. It is not one being among other beings. It is not the largest thing in a universe of things. And so the text does something careful and strange. It refuses to say what the source is, and only says again and again what it is not. It is not corporeal. It is not a quantity. It is not a quality. It is not a thing that exists among the things that exist. It is not even, the text says, rightly called a god, because the word is too small and belongs to lesser powers. Every sentence takes a name away. And then, having stripped away every name, the writer reaches for one image and lets it stand. Immeasurable light. A light with no edge and no bottom, a light that does not shine on things, but is the ground out of which everything shining comes, not a bright object somewhere far off. The luminous depth from which existence itself is drawn. Hold that image gently, because we are going to hold this whole cosmology gently, not as physics, not as a map of the sky, but as the tradition's own way of pointing at something it admits cannot be said. The source beyond every name, the immeasurable light. Now here is where it turns personal, and where, if any of this is going to matter to your Tuesday morning, it has to turn personal. The secret book says that a portion of that light was placed, hidden, inside the human being, not floating in the heavens, not reserved for the worthy, set down inside you like a seed pressed into dark soil. The text has a name for it. It calls it the luminous epinoia, a word we might translate as the afterthought, or the insight, or simply the spark. And it says this spark was set in you to wake your thinking, to rouse the sleeper, and this is the astonishing line, that it is greater than the powers that shaped your flesh. The thing hidden in you is larger than the whole apparatus that made your body, a drop of the immeasurable light carried in an ordinary human being, mostly forgotten, waiting. And in the same text, that light is not passive. It is not just a treasure buried in a field, sitting there, inert. It has a voice. Near the end of the secret book, there is a passage where the light itself speaks and describes how it comes down, 3 times, into the sleep of the world, to find its own kind and call them awake. It descends into the depth, into the prison of the body, into the very middle of the fog, and it says, I am the forethought of the pure light. I am the thinking that dwells in the light. I entered the midst of darkness, and I awakened the one who sleeps. Sit with that for a moment, because it changes the whole emotional shape of the thing. The light in you is not only something you are trying to climb toward from below, straining upward with your own small strength, it is also something reaching down toward you. The call and the one who is called are made of the same substance. The homesickness you sometimes feel on certain evenings for a home you cannot name and are fairly sure you have never seen. The tradition would say that ache is not a malfunction. It is the spark, recognizing the voice of its own kind and stirring in its sleep. So there is the picture, laid out whole, and I want you to hold all four parts of it lightly, exactly as the tradition's own poetry, rather than as claims about the machinery of the cosmos. A source beyond every name. A spark of that source, carried hidden inside you, greater than the powers that made your flesh. A forgetting that has veiled the spark so completely you do not know it is there. And a call? A light with a voice, that descends into the forgetting to wake its own. That is the whole architecture. Everything else is detail. And if that is the picture, one honest question follows immediately, and we should not skip past it, because a person with any sense asks it right away. If there is really a spark of immeasurable light inside me, if the deepest thing about me is unborn and undying, then why on earth don't I feel it? Why doesn't the light simply announce itself? Why do I wake up most mornings, not as luminous depth, but as a bundle of worries and appetites and unfinished errands? If the treasure is buried in the field, why is the field so convincingly just a field? The tradition's answer to that question is the heart of its diagnosis, and it is worth slowing all the way down for, because it is not the answer most religion gives. The Gnostic answer is not sin. It is not guilt. It is not that you are being punished, or that you have failed some test, or that a debt is owed. The word the texts reach for, again and again, is a quieter and stranger word. The word is forgetting. The secret book tells it almost as a scene. It says that the human being was made to drink a water of forgetfulness, a draught that wipes the memory clean, so that the person would not know where they came from, would not remember the light, would not recall the home. And then it adds the detail that makes the whole thing ring true to anyone who has ever lived on autopilot for a while. The forgetting was made so complete that you forget that you have forgotten. This is the deep cleverness of the diagnosis. It is not that you know there is a light and cannot reach it. It is that you have no sense. Anything is missing at all. The amnesia covers its own tracks. You do not walk around feeling exiled. You walk around feeling that the errands, the appetites, the low hum of vague dissatisfaction is simply what a life is, all it was ever going to be, the whole of the real. The water of forgetfulness does not leave a person grieving. It leaves them content with far too little and not even aware there was more. Now the texts build the forgetting into a much larger story, and I want to handle this next part with real care, because this is the part that has frightened people and thrilled people and gotten the Gnostics called heretics and dangerous. The secret book, and the writings like it, do not stop at a private forgetting inside one person. They tell a cosmic myth about how the whole shaping world came to be a place of forgetting. In that myth, the world you see was not made by the source, by the immeasurable light. It was made by a lesser power, a craftsman who came into being through a rupture, a mistake, a fall in the higher realms. And this craftsman did not know about the light above him. He looked around at the empty dark and, seeing no one above him, declared that he was the only God, the highest, the maker of all. The texts give him a name, the demiurge. The word simply means craftsman, and they surround him with lesser rulers, powers, gatekeepers that they call the archons. And this craftsman and his archons built the world and built us, and administer the whole apparatus of forgetting. The systems, the fears, the compulsions, the fate that keeps a person turning in the same grooves. Now, what do we do with a story like that? Here is where the honesty has to be exact, because this is the most misused part of the whole tradition. I am not asking you to believe that a blind cosmic craftsman literally built the sun and the tax code. Hold the demiurge and the archons as myth, as the tradition's vivid, mythic way of naming something you actually do encounter. Because strip the cosmic costume off, and what the archons describe is uncomfortably recognizable. They are the shaping powers of the counterfeit world, everything that presses in on you from outside and molds you without your consent. The demands, the fears you were handed before you could refuse them, the identity assembled out of other people's expectations, the invisible fate of a personality that keeps making the same 3 mistakes for 30 years. You do not have to believe in literal archons to have felt ruled by powers you did not choose and cannot see. The myth is a costume. The pressure it is describing is real, and it is on you right now. And underneath the great cosmic myth, the secret book names one more thing, and this last piece is the one you can actually watch, in yourself, today. It calls it the counterfeit spirit. Alongside the true spark of light, the text says, the powers of this world fashioned a false spirit and laid it over the person. An overlay, a mimic, a spirit that imitates the real one so closely that you cannot easily tell them apart. And what the counterfeit spirit does is precise and devastating. It runs your reactions for you, and it makes the running feel like you. It takes compulsion and dresses it up as free will. When it moves you, you do not experience being moved. You experience choosing. You reach for the thing. You say the sharp word. You spiral into the familiar worry. And the whole time, a voice inside narrates it as your own free decision. When in truth the decision was made before you arrived, by conditioning, by habit, by the same reactions firing on the same triggers they have fired on your whole life. And here we can set the ancient language down entirely, because the counterfeit spirit is not something you have to take on faith. It is something ordinary and verifiable, and it has a plain modern name: the autopilot. Conditioning. The mechanical part of the self that responds to the world out of pure habit, running its loops without your consent, while some part of you, the part the tradition would call the spark, watches from a little way back, or would watch if it were awake. You can catch this in yourself in the next hour. Notice a reaction firing, irritation, craving, the reflexive reach for the phone, and notice that it arrived fully formed, that you did not decide it, that it moved before you did. That gap between the reaction and the you that could have chosen is the exact place this whole tradition lives. The counterfeit spirit is the reaction that runs before you arrive, and you can verify it any day you are willing to look. The texts keep reaching for 2 images to describe this whole condition: the forgetting and the autopilot together, the light asleep under the overlay. And both images are worth holding, because between them they name the whole flavor of it. The first image is sleep. The secret book's entire cry, from beginning to end, is the cry of someone trying to wake a sleeper, rise from the deep sleep, remember, come up out of the forgetting. Not rise from evil, rise from sleep. And the second image is drunkenness. The Gospel of Thomas puts it into the mouth of Jesus with a bluntness that has always stopped me cold. He says, "I stood in the midst of the world, and I appeared to them in flesh. I found them all drunk, I found none of them thirsty. And my soul grieved for the children of humanity, because they are blind in their hearts and do not see." Feel how exact that is. Not that people are wicked, that they are drunk, moving through the world with their judgment fogged, their reactions loosened from their control. Sure they are fine, sure they are seeing clearly, exactly as the drunk man is always sure. And worse than the drunkenness, the second half of the line, none of them thirsty. Nobody wanted water, nobody felt the lack. That is, the water of forgetfulness again, from another angle. The tragedy in Thomas is not the drunkenness alone. It is the missing thirst. A person could be woken if they were thirsty, but the forgetting has taken even the thirst. So let us gather the whole diagnosis into one clear picture before we turn toward the way out, because the way home only makes sense against the diagnosis. The condition, as this tradition sees it, is not that you are bad. Nowhere in the real heart of these texts are you told that you are rotten and deserve punishment. The condition is that you are asleep, that you are living on automatic, run by an overlay of conditioned reactions that feel like your own free choices. That you are inside a fog so complete it has hidden its own edges, so that you do not even feel the lack. And that underneath all of it, this is the part that makes the whole thing hopeful rather than bleak. Underneath the overlay, hidden by the forgetting, unharmed by any of it, there is a real, good human aliveness. The spark. The immeasurable light, wearing your face. Not something you have to earn or manufacture or become worthy of. Something you already are and have simply forgotten and can be woken to remember. The task is never to throw the self away. It is to turn it back toward the light, which brings us, finally and slowly, to the way home. And I want to describe it as 5 movements. But let me be careful about what I mean by that, because the number could mislead you. These are not 5 steps you complete and leave behind, like rungs on a ladder you kick away as you climb. They overlap. They fold into each other. You will do all 5 in a single sitting, and then you will spend the rest of your life returning to all 5, deepening in each, never finishing any. It is less a staircase and more like 5 aspects of a single motion of turning around. So walk them with me slowly, one at a time, knowing they are really one thing. The first movement is to wake. By waking, the tradition does not mean a dramatic vision or a flash of white light or a voice from the sky. It means something much smaller and far more available, the plain moment in which you catch yourself in the middle of the autopilot, and there is a small click, a slight cool shift from being lost in the trance to being present to it. 1 second you are the irritation. You are fused with it. You are inside it. It is simply what is happening. And the next second there is a little space, and you are the one aware of the irritation, watching it move through. Nothing else has changed. The irritation may still be there, but you are no longer only the irritation. Some part of you has stepped back and is present. That stepping back, that small return of presence, is the whole of waking, and it is the most immediately available thing on this entire path. You do not need years. You do not need a mountain or a monastery or a teacher's permission. You can feel it right now, in the middle of this sentence, if you simply notice that you are here, listening, and that a moment ago you were half lost in your own thoughts, and now you are not. That click is the thing. Every other movement grows out of that one, so practice it above all, many small wakings, all day long, each one a tiny rehearsal of the great remembering. The second movement is to discern, and this one is subtle, and it is where a great many sincere people go wrong, so let us walk it very carefully. Once you begin to wake up and watch the reactions moving through you, a temptation arrives almost at once, a spiritual-sounding temptation that is actually a trap. The temptation is to look at every feeling that rises, every desire, every flash of anger or grief or hunger, and to label it not me, to treat the whole inner life as the counterfeit spirit, as autopilot, as enemy, and to try to stand coldly apart from all of it. This looks like progress. It is actually a subtle form of self-hatred, and the texts, read carefully, do not ask it of you, because not everything moving in you is the counterfeit spirit. Underneath the overlay is the aliveness itself, the real, God-given human capacity to feel, to want, to love, to grieve, to be moved. That aliveness is not the enemy. That aliveness is the spark's own warmth. If you try to kill it in your zeal to be free of the autopilot, you have thrown out the treasure to be rid of the wrapping. So, discernment is learning to tell 2 things apart that at first feel like one thing. On the one side, there is the driven, compulsive, must act on it right now quality. The grip, the tunnel, the sense that you have no choice, that it has to be discharged now. That is the fingerprint of the counterfeit spirit, and that is what you learn to set down. On the other side, underneath it, quieter, is the plain human feeling itself. The simple sadness, the ordinary tenderness, the honest desire, the clean anger at something genuinely wrong, that you do not set down, that you meet and feel and honor and keep. The whole art of the second movement is in that separation. You disown the hijacking. You never disown the aliveness that was hijacked. Anger comes, and you learn to release the compulsive, lashing, tunneling grip of it, while keeping the clean signal underneath, the true information that something matters. Desire comes, and you release the addictive clutch of it, while keeping the warm, living wanting that is simply part of being a creature. You are not trying to become numb. You are trying to become free. Those are opposite things, and mistaking one for the other is the most common wrong turn on this whole road. The third movement is to turn inward. And here we can bring in a voice from just outside the Gnostic library proper, because he says it more cleanly than anyone, the philosopher Plotinus, who taught in the same centuries, in the same world of ideas. Plotinus noticed that all our lives we live facing outward. Our attention pours out through the eyes and the ears and the wanting, out onto objects, out onto the world of things seen, the screen, the street, the other person's face, the endless parade of somethings to look at and react to. And he said the turning we need is not a journey to a distant place and not the acquisition of anything new. It is simply a turning around. Instead of forever staring outward at the things seen, you turn your attention back 180 degrees toward the one who is doing the seeing, toward the awareness itself, toward the silent watcher behind the eyes, in whom all the seeing is happening. He said, in effect, you have been looking outward your whole life. Simply turn around. The light you are hunting for out there in the world of objects is the light you are looking with. And you cannot find it out there among the things, because it is never a thing. It is the seeing itself. So turn the seeing back on itself, gently, and rest your attention on the bare fact of being aware. Not aware of this or that, just aware. That turn is the third movement, and it is quieter than the others, and it takes practice, because attention has spent your whole life running the other direction. The fourth movement is to grow quiet and to listen. And here the Gnostic instinct becomes genuinely unusual and worth understanding because it corrects a mistake that the eager and the striving almost always make. When most of us set out to have a spiritual experience, we try to make it happen. We push, we concentrate, we strain toward the light, we try to generate the peace, we effort our way toward the stillness, as if it were a weight to be lifted by force of will. And the tradition says gently, no, that is not how this one works. You are not trying to manufacture a state. You are not trying to produce the light by pushing hard enough. The light is not made by you and cannot be forced by you. What you are doing is quieter and humbler than that. You are getting still, and you are waiting, and you are listening, the way a person standing in the cold blue before dawn waits for the sun to rise. You do not lift the sun over the horizon. You cannot. You have no part in it at all except this, to be turned the right way and awake and waiting when it comes. And so the fourth movement is a kind of listening full of longing but empty of force. You grow quiet, you stop generating, and you wait, with the whole of your longing, for the call, for the light that has a voice, remembering that it is the one that descends, that it comes to wake its own, that your part is only to be still enough and turned enough and awake enough to hear it. Longing, yes. Force, no. It is the most receptive thing a person ever does. And the fifth movement. And please do not treat this one as an afterthought, because it is the one that keeps every other movement honest, is to carry the quiet back out. It is entirely possible to get good at the first 4 movements and go quietly, spiritually wrong, to become still and inward and serene and subtly colder, to use the silence as a place to hide from other people. There is a kind of peace that leaves a person more self-absorbed than before, more precious about their inner states, less available to the actual human beings in the next room. And by the measure of this tradition, properly understood, that is a peace that has failed. Because the spark in you is a portion of the immeasurable light, and that light in the texts is not cold and it is not private. It descends. It goes toward its own to wake them. It moves outward toward the others in love. So a rest that leaves you serene but no kinder has gone wrong somewhere, and the correction is not more meditation. The correction is to get up and love somebody plainly in the day you actually live in. One real act of kindness. One patience you would not otherwise have had. One moment where the quiet you touched inside becomes gentleness in your hands and your voice, toward a person who will never know where it came from. That is love made ordinary, and it is the proof. The whole inner path is only real to the exact degree that it comes back out as ordinary kindness. Everything else is decoration. That single, unglamorous outward act is what keeps the entire thing honest. So those are the 5 movements. Walk slowly, wake, discern, turn inward, grow quiet and listen, and carry the quiet back out. Now let me put them together into something concrete. The full daily practice, step by step. The thing you could actually do tomorrow morning before the day takes you and turns you back onto automatic. Find a few minutes early, before the errands begin, and sit down somewhere you will not be interrupted. You do not need any special posture. Just sit in a way that is upright enough to stay alert and comfortable enough to stay still. And begin by simply settling. Let the body land. Feel the weight of yourself in the chair, the contact of your feet with the floor, the small sounds of the room. You are not trying to get anywhere yet. You are just arriving, letting the churn of the morning start to settle like silt in a glass of water going still. Give it a full minute. There is no hurry. The whole practice is undone if you bring the hurry into it. Then, gently, let the breath begin to lengthen and slow, not forced, not strained, just longer and smoother than usual. A useful rhythm, and one worth being honest about, is something near 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, which comes to roughly 6 breaths a minute. And here I want to be plain about why, because this is one of the checkable parts, and I will not dress it up as magic. Breathing slowly at about that rate, with a long, easy out-breath, quiets the nervous system. It shifts the body toward rest, steadies the heart, loosens the low background tension. That is a plain, documented physiological effect, not a mystical one. And it is exactly enough. You are settling the instrument so it can grow quiet. Let the breath lengthen and feel the body begin to follow it down into calm. Then, as the body settles, take up one word and carry it on the breath. A single word, a name for the source, if a particular one is alive for you, or simply a word like light, or home, or the bare word listen, carried lightly on the rhythm of the breathing. This is not a chant, and it is not a demand. The word is only a place for your attention to rest, a single point to return to, so that when the mind wanders, and it will wander constantly, that is not failure, that is just what minds do. You have somewhere to come back to. And each time you notice, you have drifted off into thinking. That noticing is the first movement, the waking happening again. So welcome it. A thought grabs you, you get carried off down some corridor of planning or worry, and then the click. You notice, and you feel the compulsive grip of the thought, and you gently set it down, and you come back to the one word on the breath. That whole small cycle, drift, notice, release, return, is the practice. You will do it 100 times in a few minutes, and every single repetition is a rep of waking. You are not failing every time you drift. You are succeeding every time you return. And then, after a while of this, and you will feel when the time is right, when the mind has grown a little more transparent and the body a little more still, do something that sounds like the opposite of everything you have just been doing. Drop even the word. Let go of the practice itself. Stop reaching, stop repeating, stop doing anything at all, and simply rest. Do not manufacture a single thing. Do not try to feel the light, or produce a state, or achieve an experience. Just let the inner agitation thin out into stillness, and rest there, in the quiet, wanting nothing, listening for nothing in particular, turn the right way and awake and receptive, the way the eye waits for the dawn. That resting, that letting go into stillness, is what the texts call repose, the coming home, the still point that the whole map has been pointing at. You cannot force your way into it. You can only stop and become quiet enough and let it be there when it comes. Give it as long as it wants. And if it does not come today, that is fine. The waiting itself is the practice. And then, before you get up and let the day have you, do one more thing, and it is small, and it is important. Open your eyes and look at the ordinary room around you, the light on the wall, the cup on the table, the plain, unremarkable morning, and look at it for a moment as though it were already enough, as though you did not need it to be anywhere else or anything more than exactly what it is. Because there is a line in the Gospel of Thomas that belongs precisely here, and it says, "The kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it, not coming later, not somewhere else. Spread out on the ground in front of you, in the light on the wall, and the cup on the table, and the only thing missing is the seeing. So take one moment and let yourself see it, the ordinary made luminous simply by being looked at without wanting it to be otherwise. And then, last of all, choose one kindness. Before you stand up, pick one concrete thing, one patience you will extend, one message you will send, one small generosity you will offer someone today, and carry it out of the practice with you as the whole point of having sat down at all. That is the fifth movement made specific. That is how the quiet gets its legs and walks back out into the world. Settle, lengthen the breath, carry one word, drop even that and rest in the repose. Look at the ordinary room as already enough and choose one kindness to carry out. That is the whole practice. It costs you a few minutes and nothing else, and you can begin it tomorrow. I want to add one honest and serious word before we finish, because a teaching like this can be handled carelessly, and I would rather it not be handled carelessly by you. Go gently with all of it. Intensive inner work, long silences, deep turning inward, the deliberate loosening of the ordinary self, can stir up strong states and more feeling than you expected, and it does not do that to everyone, but it does it to some. So do not push, do not chase intensity, do not treat this as a performance or a race or a thing to be conquered by force. That instinct is the very autopilot. The practice is meant to loosen, sneaking back in through the door marked spiritual progress. Small and steady and gentle goes much further here than dramatic. And if you carry a history of serious mental health difficulty, if deep introspection has taken you to hard places before, then please do this alongside a professional or a teacher you trust and not alone. There is no prize for going faster or further into the dark by yourself. The path is patient. It will wait for you. And that brings me to the frame I promised at the beginning to keep honest all the way through, and it is the note I most want to leave you standing on. None of this. None of the light, the spark, the descending voice, the demiurge, the archons, the water of forgetfulness. is offered to you as physics, or as a promise that you can bend reality by wanting to, or summon a state on command. It is a tradition's map of the inner life, one of the oldest and strangest and most beautiful maps human beings have ever drawn, and it is offered to you as exactly that, a map, to be held lightly, walked seriously, and tested only where it can actually be tested. So hold the cosmology as its myth, and not as a report about the sky. And then test the small things, the things that are genuinely yours to check, in the only laboratory you have, which is your own experience over time. Can you feel the click of waking, the small return of presence in the middle of a reaction? You can test that today. Does slowing the breath quiet the body? You can test that in 10 minutes. Does catching the compulsion loosen its grip? Does the practice, kept up over weeks, leave you a little more present, a little steadier, a little quicker to kindness? Those are the checkable claims, and they are smaller than the myth, and they are real, and this is the thing I have come to believe most firmly of all. They are entirely enough. You do not need the cosmology to be literally true, to be genuinely changed by the practice. You only need to do it gently and watch what happens and be honest about what you find. Because underneath all the ancient machinery, the thing this tradition is finally pointing at is very simple and very close and was never actually far away. That there is a light in you that the forgetting has covered but not touched. That you can wake in small ways many times a day. That you can learn to tell the compulsion from the aliveness and keep the aliveness. That you can turn inward and grow quiet and wait like the eye for the dawn. And that the whole of it only comes true when it walks back out of you as ordinary kindness in the ordinary day toward the ordinary people you will actually meet. Start anywhere. Start small. Start tomorrow morning with a few quiet minutes and one act of love. The light, the tradition insists, is already there and already yours, and was never for one moment actually asleep, only waiting the whole time to be remembered. And if you want to hear the source itself, with nothing added and nothing softened, our companion channel, our hidden archive, reads these texts straight through, untouched. The secret book of John, the Gospel of Thomas, and the rest. So you can weigh the ancient words plainly, in their own voice, and decide for yourself what is true.